Comparing fractions. So far in this lesson, we've been learning how to compare fractions using pictures, but now I'm going to teach you how to do this mathematically. So in our first example, we want to change each pair of fractions into like fractions so that we can compare them using the greater than, the less than, or the equal to symbol. So in our first example, our two fractions are 2 over 3 and 3 over 4. So the first thing I noticed is I don't have the same denominators. Because I don't have the same denominators, I can't just compare the numerators. So the first thing I have to do is get like fractions. And to get like fractions when you're already given two fractions is just to multiply the denominators together. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 3 times 4 and get a new common denominator. So 3 times 4 is 12. That's a simple math fact that we have been practicing. So now I've got two new denominators. So now let's look at the first fraction here, which is 2 over 3. Well, I know that I had to multiply the denominator by 4 to get 12, and whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do the same thing to the top. So if I multiply the bottom by 4, I also have to multiply the top, which is a numerator, by 4 as well. So I'm just going to write that as a fraction because when the numerator and the denominator are the same, you're actually technically multiplying by 1. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to multiply the numerator, which is 2 times 4, to get my new numerator of 8. Perfect. So let's do the same to the second fraction. So my second fraction, I had to multiply the denominator by 3 to get the common denominator of 12. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator as well. So I'm going to multiply the top by 3 as well. 3 times 3, another simple math fact, is 9. Perfect. So now I can compare these two fractions. I have the same denominators, so all I have to look at are the numerators. So I've got 8 as my first numerator and 9 as a second numerator. I know that 8 is smaller than 9, so the symbol I'm going to put in between is the less than symbol because 8 is less than 9. So my final answer for this question, go back to our original fractions, not our equivalent ones, is 2/3 is less than 3/4. Okay, so that's our final answer. So what we had to do was get a common denominator, and all we did was we multiplied the two denominators of the fractions together, and then whatever we did to one denominator, we did to the numerator of that one, and so forth to get our like fractions. Okay, let's do a couple more examples. Example 2, change each pair of fractions into like fractions so that you can compare them with greater than, less than, or equal to symbols. So our two fractions here are 1 over 6 and 5 over 30. Well, if you remember what we did last time was we multiplied the two denominators together to get a common denominator, but in this one, this is a special case. This one, if you look at it and go, hey, I'm looking at the denominators and I notice something. I know that 30 is a multiple of 6. So instead of actually multiplying 6 times 30 and getting a really big number, 180, what I can actually do is I can get a common denominator by just multiplying our first fraction here to get that like fraction. So I know that 5 times 6 is equal to 30. So if I multiply my denominator of the first fraction by 5 and the numerator by 5 as well, because whatever we do to the denominator, we also have to do to the numerator to get our like fractions, I'll actually just have like fractions. So 1 over 6 is equivalent to 5 over 30. Hey, what was our second fraction? Oh, it was also 5 over 30. Look at that. We didn't actually have to take those extra steps to get a bigger number and compare those. I noticed that 6 is a multiple of 30, so I was able to just multiply one of my fractions to get a like fraction. If we did it the other way, we'd still get the same answer, but this is just a little easier. And what I notice is the numerators are the same, the denominators are the same, so therefore these two fractions are equal to one another. And once again, my final answer, if I write it out, go back to your original fractions and write it out as is and put the inequality in the middle. So in fact, 1 over 6 is equal to 5 over 30. That wasn't too bad, was it? Let's do one more example together. Okay, last example. So in this example, we are comparing the two fractions 5/6 and 5/8. Well, our numerators are the same, but we can't actually compare them because we don't have like denominators. So the first thing I have to do is get our like fractions going. And the easiest way to do that is to take our two denominators and multiply them together. So 6 times 8 is 48. So those are my new denominators. And because I have the same denominators, I will be able to compare these two fractions. So now let's take a closer look at our first fraction. We have 5 over 6. Well, I multiplied the denominator by 8, and whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, so I'm going to multiply the top by 8 as well. 8 times 5 gives me 40. On to my next fraction. I multiplied 8 by 6 to get 48. And whatever I did to the bottom, I have to do to the top as well. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 6 to get 30. Now I have common denominators. I have like fractions. I can compare the two numerators and find out my final answer. So my numerators are 40 and 30. And I know 30 is smaller than 40. So my inequality will face the first fraction. And my final answer here, remember, always go back to your original fraction and write it out. So 5/6 is greater than 5/8. And that is my final answer. All right, so it's now time for you to try the practice problems in your learning guides. So you're going to be asked to compare using pictures. So make sure you are actually making the rectangles the same size and evenly making those markers to make sure you don't have any confusion there. And then you're also going to be comparing using like fractions. So you will be using this method of multiplying the denominators together and then multiplying the numerators by whatever you multiplied the denominators by. Good luck, and don't forget to check your solutions at the end.